our family grew from 2 kids last fall to 5 kids now. So we've adopted all our kids and brought in 2 little guys that are brothers to give them foster care. We're hoping to be able to turn that into adoption in the next few months. And so we've got 5 kids under 6, and I'm way too old to have kids that young. And
MidSouth Viewpoint, a Christian news and information feature of Bott Radio Network 640 AM, discussing the news, views, issues, and concerns that affect our community. Join us now for today's edition of MidSouth Viewpoint.
Welcome to MidSouth Viewpoint. I'm Byron Tyler, glad to have you back on another edition of our broadcast. Today we welcome Pastor Bryan Loritts from Fellowship Memphis Church and John Bryson, who's affectionately known as JB. And it's good to see you guys during the Christmas season. Bryan, you told me in the hall that you're getting ready for the holidays?
Absolutely, like everybody else, hanging lights and putting up Christmas trees and just having a blast with the family.
Let me ask you, what part of putting up the decorations do you enjoy most?
Well, I want to be honest with you. So I don't go full out, putting up lights around the house. It's way too much work. But I actually enjoy putting up the tree, and we've got this family tradition where we do it the day after Thanksgiving, and it's just a fun time. Put on some corny Christmas music and have at it. So,
are you able to keep it together? I mean, emotionally, especially when the lights don't come on right, or are you trying to find the light that's not working?
No, I'm not that over the top, but we do enjoy it. Yeah.
How about for you, JB?
yeah, it's the same way. My wife goes nuts at Christmas, so it looks like Christmas is thrown up all over our house. So, we're in the season.
So it is beginning to look a whole lot like Christmas around your homes.
It is.
Wow. It is a special time for families to get together and to be together and to celebrate Jesus, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah, and we just, we really try to go to war with the kind of the spirit of materialism that's so pervasive in our culture, and so we do some things that are in our family. We've got the Advent calendar, and our church has helped to put out a devotional that's been huge in helping us to focus our thoughts. But we also want to enjoy it as well. And so we'll buy the gifts and have a good time, but try to drill down and constantly remind my 10, 9, and 7-year-old what it's really for. So,
what would be your definition of materialism? Because even in our minds as believers in Christ, we know what we think it is. And we say, well, that's somebody, who has just a lot of money and I was always thinking about making more money, That's usually our definition. But it can be deceiving. That definition can be deceiving, can it not?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you got to be careful because on one extreme, a lot of it's relative. I mean, I just finished reading a biography about Steve Jobs buying a house here in Memphis when he came here to have his liver transplant, and he only bought it for like 6 to 8 months. And some people would go, that is ridiculous. But if you look at all the money that he had, I mean, it could have been a wise choice. I don't think we can definitively look at someone and the purchases that they make and from the outside say they're materialistic. I think materialism is more of a condition of the heart. It's me feeling like I've got status, significance, success based on what I have. It's me being defined by my possessions.
And we have to be careful for that, don't we, JB?
We do. And the Bible really gives us kind of 4 types of people. It gives us examples of the righteous rich, the unrighteous rich, the righteous poor, and the unrighteous poor. And so it gives us all those categories. And so it really is a condition of the heart and looking for things to define who I am and put my hope and trust, just like any other idol, into something other than Christ to give me significance, worth, value, and all those things.
How does Fellowship Memphis prepare for this season of the year?
Well, yeah, it's a festive time like it is with so many other churches. And like I said, we've come out with an Advent devotional, which people can go to fellowshipmemphis.org and download. That's huge in helping to guide our thoughts. We'll come the 18th, 24th, and 25th. We'll actually take a time out and spend some intentional time to walk through some passages that center around the advent of Jesus Christ. In fact, on Christmas Eve, we're doing 2 services at 4 in the afternoon and at 6. And Christmas Day, we'll do 1 service. Right now, we're 1 church, 2 locations, and we'll all come together for 1 service at 11 o'clock on Christmas Day. So those things will help to anchor us in who Jesus is.
And JB, for you and your part of the ministry at Fellowship, what are some things that you want to contribute or you like to see happen during this time of year?
Yeah, one of the unique things about our holiday season is we have all family worship, and so we have kids and toddlers and everybody in there together. It makes for a little loud and festive Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, but we really take that as an opportunity to celebrate families as well when we celebrate all together in the worship service that way.
Absolutely.
Where are families today? In your observation, in your ministry, when you counsel with them, the struggles and things they're going through, where are they at?
Well, on the one side, on the positive side, I think this moment in history more than any other, when you just study it sociologically as far as what's happening in the United States, especially in the Christian community, I'm hearing more of a desire to really invest in marriages in many sectors of our culture. I'm hearing more, almost to the other extreme of the idolatry of family, which is kind of in world history really unprecedented, of really wanting to spend time, invest in children. So I look at that as a positive. Of course, there's problems with overdoing it to that one extreme. But on the other side, it's kind of the same song being played just a million different ways now, where you've got a manhood problem in the home, which we think the majority of difficulties lead back to dysfunctional men, and JB's just been huge at our church, helping to lead the charge through our Fight Club ministry and a couple other things that we do. So I think families are in crisis, to be quite honest with you. But I am seeing kind of that proverbial light at the end of the tunnel as well.
JB, are you experiencing that among men ministry, as Bryan just shared? I was thinking about the past of these big conferences like Promise Keepers, and men go and get, all pumped up emotionally, and yet they come back and their families, nothing's really changed, Are you seeing men really take charge and taking hold of their responsibilities?
We're hoping so. We're really kind of ringing that bell, kind of championing that, as Bryan mentioned. I do think there was definitely a role God used a lot of the Promise Keepers in those event-based ministries, but I felt like what was lacking was a real consistent process and a really kind of a way for men to understand what it means to live out their masculinity, what biblical masculinity is all about. And so we've tried to really kind of press into that issue consistently. We talk about it all the time. We do use a deal we call Fight Clubs, which take men for 4 or 5 week journeys, and we'll talk about parenting, the role of a servant leader at home, what God's original design for man was back in Genesis 1 and 2, his original struggle, his core struggle, which we would define as passivity, that we see in Genesis 3. And so it's just a theme in our church that we really want to call men up. And as Bryan just alluded to, we really feel like if you get men right, if men behave well and biblically and nobly, it's like 95% of all your other issues go away.
And then Byron, not to cut you off, but JB's also got a great resource coming out. What's it called, JB?
The 33 series.
Yeah, which is a great manhood series.
Okay. And we'll be hearing more about that when we talk about it.
We're excited about it.
Okay, as a ministry, how long has Fellowship Memphis been in town now?
We just turned 8 the first Sunday in November, and did a celebration, brought down John Tyson from New York. He's a pastor up there, and he charged us up about the church. And so it's hard to believe 8 years ago, Memorial Day week in 2003, our family landed here, and that summer we began to rally the troops, and we officially launched the first Sunday in November 2003.
Looking where you are today and thinking back in those first days when there was just a few families getting together and having prayer, studying the Word together, what have you seen God do? What have been some of the things that expectations met, maybe regrets, disappointments? Or what do you see how do you see the ministry today?
Well, JB should jump in there. He's really the one. I would consider JB to be the founder. I'm at most a co-founder, but JB was the one who actually got on the horn and called me and invited me to participate in something that had already gotten going by the time I stepped into it. So,
yeah, we landed here that Memorial Day weekend in 2003, and the journey's been a lot of things. I think I was told to me church planting would peak every emotion, and in a lot of ways that's been true. The highs have been incredibly high. The lows have been incredibly low. The fun times have been really fun. The street fights have been really bloody. And so I think we kind of stand here wobbling a little bit, all as kind of wounded leaders a little bit, and with some disappointments, a ton of lessons learned, a lot of victories, and just a praise be to God, because it's really His story of what He's done in our hearts and amongst us, and as a people He's gathered together.
Well, you feel like now a foundation has been laid that you can really move off, because it takes some time, to get established and to build that core group that you can move out of in ministry.
Oh, yeah. I mean, 8 years doing anything, you've got a foundation. So the question is it a good one? And I really feel like we've got a great foundation. I think the DNA of who we are as a church and what we're known for, the stuff that I hear about our church around town, I'm sure I don't hear the negative, but it's been all positive. And I just look out at our people who come to our church on Sunday mornings. I couldn't be prouder of our church. So I'm extremely, extremely happy with what God has done and overwhelmed with who He's brought through our doors.
Well, I hear some exciting stories from the members that are just, pumped to be plugged into fellowship, and just the opportunity of ministry that you guys afford and the vision that you've cast for our city. Because it is Fellowship Memphis is a church about people. You don't get wrapped up in a lot of buildings. Because
we don't have one.
That's the point. I'm trying, yeah.
And if you've got one, we'll take one, though.
Right.
You kind of are the nomads. You kind of are following Abraham's principle of tent. And
Absolutely. Well, like anything, there's an upside to it, and, there's a huge financial upside. That's been great. There's a huge philosophical, biblical upside. I think it's forced us to focus in on what really matters. And I know this is a well-said statement, but the church isn't about buildings. It's about people. And when you rent, you're constantly reminded of that. The downside, well, I'll say it this way. The challenge is you're constantly having to recruit volunteers to help you to set up and tear down. And being a renter, you're at the whims and wishes of your landlord, which can be an incredible challenge at times.
And what are some of the challenges in keeping your people motivated, JB, through that? I mean, knowing that they have to be there Sunday to set up, to tear down consistently, how do you keep them motivated?
Yeah, this is a DNA issue for us. I think for our people, that it's become their normal. We've kind of created a new normal for them, and it really is inspiring. And really, probably a lot of the reason it ties in directly with our vision for equipping and really seeing the city as the place where it's called to be the church, not just do church. And so it really makes sense, and it's consistent with a lot of our other core values. And so that's not a disconnect for them. That's more of an active congruence with a lot of what we believe and what we're calling people to go be in their neighborhoods and workplaces and campuses and families.
Go ahead.
Yeah, if you're a consumer, if that's your mindset coming in our front door, you're going to realize real quickly you're not going to have a long shelf life at our church.
Yeah.
The face of the church is a multicultural, multiracial. That's kind of the idea for the ministry. It was kind of birthed in the heart, wasn't it, JB?
Yeah, I would say, and we're very proud of that, and we pursue that. I'd say the core of our church is the gospel, and really wanting to preach the word well and have people love well and celebrate who Jesus is and what He did for us. And a natural outflow of that, we believe, should be a diverse church, a church that looks like the city of Memphis. And so, yes, racially and culturally, but also intergenerationally. When we see 1 Tim 2 and Titus 2, you see older men, older women, younger women. And so socioeconomically, intergenerationally, racially, culturally, we just begged God to allow us to be a part of that. We talk about that all the time. When you fast forward and look at heaven, you're going to see every tongue, tribe, nation, and people group worshiping God together. And so if you don't like diverse church, you won't stand heaven, because that's exactly where we're headed.
Right.
Going back to the Christmas story and looking back at something that happened so many years ago, over a couple thousand years ago, that Christ incarnate came to earth. Talk about how the relevancy and how we can make that applicable into, our neighborhoods and into our community.
Well, the first thing that comes to my mind is an incredible sense of hope. If you just walk through the Old Testament and you look at all the prophecies about the Messiah coming, hundreds of them, and you realize they were fulfilled in the first advent, that gives me incredible hope that just as He came once, He will come again. And so living in between the first Advent and the second Advent infused with hope, that makes all the difference in the world for everything that I do in my life, from how I view money to how I view people and engage people. All of that's under kind of the auspices, the heading of Jesus Christ. So it's the word hope, and it totally changes the game for me.
I agree. And not only are there those wonderful theological realities, but even sociologically, and those realities as well, that here, our Messiah came, humbled himself, was born to a single mom, and in a tough situation, rejected, had to be born in a manger, and just who he was and his humanity as well, and the great hope and picture he gives us is a great reminder in this season as well.
Is there one aspect of the Christmas story that stands out to you guys that you like to reflect on?
I was talking a little bit about this on Sunday, just the incredible generosity of Jesus in giving up his very life, and how that's the starting point of the gospel, and how that should motivate generosity in my own life. I mean, to think of one who gave up the comforts of heaven, Philippians chapter 2, didn't regard equality with God something to be grasped, but humbled himself and took the form of a servant. What generosity! What a model of servanthood. And that should inspire me and inspire all of us who name the name of Jesus Christ to do likewise.
How about for you, JB?
Yeah, along with that as well, just this idea of this Redeemer who came, who identified with you and I and all of us in our humanity, that came and struggled with what we struggle with, and who really kind of fought the noble fight of being a human, and obviously did it perfectly, but just that idea that he would, I can identify with my Savior because he put skin and flesh on, is deeply encouraging and a great reminder this time of year.
Okay, let's take us into the Bryson home. You've already mentioned about Beth going spastic on the Christmas decorations, but what's it like in your home at Christmas time?
It's kind of crazy. Our family grew from 2 kids last fall to 5 kids now, so we've adopted all our kids and brought in 2 little guys that are brothers to give them foster care. We're hoping to be able to turn that into adoption in the next few months. And so we've got 5 kids under 6, and I'm way too old to have kids that young. And so we got 6, 3.5, 3, 2, and 6 months. And so it's a little nutso at our house right now.
Any special traditions or things that you like to bring to your home at this time?
Well, with younger kids, we're just kind of starting out our tradition, so I'm learning from guys like Bryan that have a little older kids and guys in front of me. But yeah, we're kind of seizing the Thanksgiving moments to try to do have each kid name a few things they're thankful about and really kind of put language to that. Coming into the Christmas season, we just kind of put the stake in the ground, and rather than going to a parent or in-law's house, we're going to be home for this Christmas, which is a war every man's got to fight at some point. And so we're going to be home for Christmas, and we're going to start instituting this year some of our own personal family traditions that I'm quite frankly processing now, like how can I really seize this and mark this moment. And that's one of the things we talk about with our men, is to see themselves as the chief memory maker of their home. And what does it look like for you as a man to lead your family in marking moments? I really feel like we've lost that as a culture, and so I'm trying to make that battle myself in my own home.
Because these moments are so fleeting; they don't last very long. That time we have to invest in our children, it goes by so fast.
Yeah, the old saying goes, the days are long and the years are short, and that's exactly been true for us already.
Brian, take us inside the Loritts home.
Yeah, we same thing as far as what JB mentioned. We're home every Christmas. Part of that is my father's a pastor as well, and Christmas Eve services are huge for them down there in Atlanta, and we do a Christmas Eve services. So it's just, I'm not getting in a car on Christmas Day and driving. Call me selfish or whatever. So we've just established that tradition, and then we always bring my mother-in-law out. My wife is a child of divorce, so her father, has a new family, and we've got a great relationship with him. But we bring the mother-in-law out, and she never remarried or hasn't remained remarried, and so it's been good to have her out and just spend some time with her, and so it's been a great time.
This season also brings a lot of pain to people's lives at this time of the year, whether it be someone that has passed or just maybe some broken relationship that hasn't been restored yet. It can be a really tough season to get through, and some people, use alcohol to kind of drown the feelings, or just hoping that this time will go away and get over with.
I agree that's under talked about, because that is a reality for a lot of people, that this season just opens up wounds, reminds them of their loneliness. I was just having lunch with a guy that went through a divorce a couple years ago, and he was just sharing that how sad Thanksgiving and Christmas is in his life, and how he was struggling with loneliness in the midst of that. And so, yeah, that is a real reality.
Any word, Bryan?
Well, we try to be sensitive to that at the church, and so on the one hand, we want to celebrate it, but we will always typically footnote that with just acknowledging, for many of you all, this is a painful reminder. You're going to literally sit down at your dinner table and look at an empty seat, or a seat that used to be occupied by a loved one who's no longer with us. And so, we even feel that on Mother's Day and Father's Day as well, and wanting to acknowledge that, and praying a blessing over them, that they would experience what Paul talks about in 2 Corinthians 1, the God of all comfort, that God would comfort them during this time.
That's what I was just thinking about, his comfort. I mean, the comfort that he was willing, as you mentioned, to step out of the glory of heaven in the first place, but then to allow that comfort of him coming to carry us through all seasons of life, not just Christmas, as you mentioned, other seasons too.
Absolutely.
Well, you mentioned a moment ago that Fellowship Memphis is one church, two locations, but you have an announcement to make.
Yes, we are. We're prayerfully seeking God's guidance about a third location. We've got about 150 or so people who currently go to one of our locations who live out east, and by out east we're talking Germantown, Collierville, and beyond. Who there's not a lot of churches with our DNA, and specifically gospel-centered disciple making, but really to emphasize the multi-ethnic piece in that part of town. And we're really sensitive. It's not about us trying to franchise or to establish our own kingdom. It's not about that, but it's about us saying, what would it look like for us to subtract in order to multiply? To have people, instead of them driving 15, 30 plus minutes, leaving their community to come to where we are, what if we came to them? I actually live in Collierville. And the interesting thing about Collierville is, as I've engaged my neighbors and talked to them about our church, we've got one couple who's come from our neighborhood, but for the most part, we're met with this response of, hey, we drive into Memphis 5 days a week, which for a guy coming from L.A., that's just crazy for me, as if it's some huge drive. But I get it's just part of the culture. Kind of the mindset for many people in Collierville is, on the weekends, we'd prefer to have something here, and this is where we play. And so if we could have something here similar to what you've got going on, so what would it look like for us to come to them?
Plus, it provides an opportunity for them to maybe impact their neighborhoods more in a more a pointed way, I guess.
That's exactly right. And I think those are the two things that make each outpost for us unique, is a chance for unique opportunities for community, because there's a chance, great chance that geographically you're going to live closer to people that you can connect on days other than Sunday. And then also for mission, like what are the unique opportunities to seek the shalom of that area? What are the unique pieces of brokenness in those neighborhoods? And so we're excited there's great churches in Germantown and Collierville, and we're literally praying for 100 more, and we're very excited about joining the efforts there in those communities in our greater Memphis area.
I like the name that you refer to these different campus locations as an outpost. Talk about what that means to you, an outpost.
Well, the image that comes to mind of the campus is facilities, and that this is kind of facility driven, and we want to keep a missional mindset, and outpost is one of those words that helps us to keep that mindset.
Kind of get charged up and then go out and do your job for Christ.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yes.
Any date set and when this might come to fruition?
We're currently nurturing, as Bryan mentioned, those 150 or so folks that are already within our body. There's also some that have heard we're coming that way, so there's some new relationships we're making. We're really kind of focusing in now on the right facility, and obviously there's some unique challenges in that, and so we are hoping, Lord willing, within the next, I'd say, 3 to 6 months to be able to kind of know exactly when we're opening our doors, but that's still yet to be determined exactly.
Any ministry directive toward those in our community, Bryan, JB, with those that aren't, following Christ, maybe are following a different faith or different religion? Do you have contact in ways? I haven't had much conversation with other churches and pastors of how they interact with people of other faith, maybe of those of a Muslim belief or another type of religion?
Well, I tell you a couple of things that's been working well for us. We just did a urban marriage conference. We flew way under the radar on it because we didn't want to come across as if this was a fellowship thing. We just pretty much held a draft and got 100 people, 50 couples, and pretty much spoke into their marriages. And one of the things we realized coming out of that is I don't care if you're a believer or a non-believer, everyone has a felt need to say, hey, I'd like to have a better marriage. And so what we're looking at with our marriage investment class that is coming up this next semester is to intentionally use that this time to go after people who don't know Jesus. Another thing that's worked really well for us is we've engaged at Kingsbury High School and some other schools. And just a part of us loving on those schools has been revolutionary to introducing some of those teachers, faculty members, administrators to the gospel. So it has not been the traditional knock on doors, pass out tracts, and we are in no way saying that that's irrelevant and we shouldn't do that. But it's been more relational. It's been more us rolling up our sleeves and loving on them with no strings attached. That has wowed people.
Any results or stories as a result of the relationship with Kingsbury as an example? Because we've talked about your involvement with this campus in the past when you started and your reason for doing this. Anything has come out of that as a result of your ministry?
We've had a lot of their faculty come and join us. In fact, we just brought on an elder, and that elder specifically heard about our church through our relationship with Kingsbury High School, where he is a teacher there. So it's borne a lot of fruit, and again, people have been wowed by that. One of the first things we did when we went over there is our small groups. I think we wrote like 120 thank you notes with a gift card to a restaurant just saying, hey, we want you to know we appreciate your efforts. And it's kind of a left-handed compliment because what happened was so many of them were so wowed by that. They ended up saying, I've worked Memphis City Schools 10, 20, 30 years, whatever, and I've never felt so appreciated. And you're going, we're sorry. You should definitely feel more appreciated than what you actually are. But again, no strings attached. We're just loving on you, investing in you. That's borne a lot of fruit.
JB, isn't that kind of foundational for us as believers? You heard that saying that, people really don't care, how much you know till they know how much you care. We've talked about that before.
It is, and you can fall off both sides of that cliff. We do that. We love on that school and do other acts of justice because it's the right thing to do. For us, and we believe this philosophically, that's not just so we get an opportunity to share the gospel. And we're all about sharing the gospel. We share the gospel a lot. But we would draw a distinction between pursuing the right thing to do and to love our city in a way that gives God glory and to seek its shalom and to really see the city of Memphis the way God sees the city of Memphis and do the right thing and take the right steps, period. And then as God gives opportunities to declare the gospel and the beauty of Christ and the sufficiency of Christ, we take that. We encourage all of our people to take that opportunity, but we do it because it's the right thing to do. It's not a strategy for us.
Bryan, JB just said something that really stood out to me when he said doing acts of justice. And I was thinking, we live in such an unjust society today. And so when people start seeing justice and, the right thing done, that has to have an impact.
Absolutely, and I want to be careful to disconnect it from a political agenda. I mean, it really is a gospel issue. I mean, fundamentally, if you look at all of us were the least of these, and we had a greater need than physical, and that was spiritual. We were spiritually destitute, spiritually bankrupt, but a rich, wealthy, benevolent God did not sit on his wealth and just call us to pull ourselves up by our own bootstraps. But he came off of his wealth, sent his only son, and out of his generosity, now we're in relationship with him. So that because our relationship with God starts off on a generous, just note where he paid for us the debt that we could not pay, part of what it means fundamentally to live the gospel is we do likewise for others. And here's the tension. I mean, if you read the New Testament, one of the disturbing things for many people is Jesus seems to be more than okay with feeding someone without necessarily saying, okay, now that I've fed you, here's the hook. I got to preach a sermon to you.
Yeah.
I mean, that messes you up when you look at it that way. He was okay with that tension. And I think it's okay for us to be in that tension as well.
Well, guys, our time is slipping away. And before we say goodbye on this program, JB, I was wondering if you might have a prayer for those we talked about a moment ago during this season who are lonely and brokenhearted, as you suggested, your friend just now as you visited with him over lunch. I can't help but think there's others listening right now that might be feeling the pain of the season.
Yeah, I'd love to do that. Father, thank you for this opportunity to share about you. I thank you for this Christmas season that reminds us of you coming to earth. And as Byron has talked about, I do specifically pray for those who are feeling loss, loneliness, who are just face to face with the brokenness of this world. Lord, any encouragement or hope that we feel from Christmas, any traditions that warm our hearts are merely glimpses of what will be one day forever with you. And until then, we labor with and pray for all of us struggle with hurts and hang-ups and losses, and I pray for specifically for those who've lost loved ones, who've been through the tragedy of loss this past year and recent months, and just pray that you as the God of comfort will comfort them, will give them a hope in the gospel, and we pray for them specifically this season. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Bryan, if those listening want more information about Fellowship Memphis, you have a website, gives you details about the service times.
Absolutely. So you can go to fellowshipmemphis.org, and we, again, right now we're in 2 locations. At our Colonial location, Colonial Middle School, we're at 9 and 11. Our downtown location, which is Downtown Elementary on 4th and Madison, they do a 10 o'clock service. And then starting January 15th at our Colonial location, we'll be doing a 6 p.m. Sunday evening service, which will be the same message from that Sunday morning.
Bryan Loritts, John Bryson, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas to you.
Thanks for listening to MidSouth Viewpoint. If you'd like to join the conversation, you can email us. Our address is wcrv@botradionetwork.com. This has been MidSouth Viewpoint, another Christian news and information feature from Bot Radio Network 640 AM.